Dricus du Plessis will defend his UFC World Middleweight Championship title against Sean Strickland in Sydney, Australia on the 8th of February. The news was confirmed over the weekend by the UFC. This despite the Minister of Sport, Gayton, Mckenzie, saying that he would negotiate with a fight promoter, Dana White, to have du Plessis, known as Hard Knocks, fight in South Africa. Joining us now is MMA commentator, journalist and broadcaster, Sias du Plessis. A very good afternoon. Welcome to Newzroom Afrika. I'm not sure if it's so much of a surprise because we did hear Morne Visser alluding to the fact that they, back in October, knew that they were going to fight in Australia.
Good afternoon, Vaylen. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I don't think it's come as a surprise to many who have followed Dricus very closely, and after Morne alluded to the fact that, there was the option of going to Australia. I think maybe the biggest surprise was it was Strickland and not Khamzat Chimaev. But Chimaev is on a no-fly list, so he can't sort of compete anywhere else in the world. So that restricts his movement. And he has been someone who's been on the radar, dismantling Robert Whittaker at a recent event. But Strickland, du Plessis 2 in Sydney, 8th of February at 3:12, promises to be very interesting indeed. I think Dricus has come out on social media and said that, they thought that the first occasion was a robbery. He says people are going to call it attempted murder. So the champ is fired up and ready to go. And, at this point in time, I think this is an opportunity for Dricus to showcase how much he's evolved as a fighter and also to really prove that he is the undisputed middleweight champion of the UFC.
I suppose this does come as a bit of a shock for South Africans because there was the promise that the next time that Dricus du Plessis does get into the octagon, it will be in front of South African fans.
Yeah, it is a bit disappointing. We would love to have seen our very own history maker, Dricus du Plessis, the champion of the UFC, fighting on South African soil, defending his title, hopefully. That hasn't really come to the fore, and I think we're quite disappointed as a nation that have got behind Dricus du Plessis. We've really supported it. But I think there's a lot to bear in mind here. We don't have the stadiums that have roofs on. Our venues that have roofs are not big enough for the UFC. They want at least sort of a 15,000-seater venue that's under roof where they can control the weather and the elements. And that's played to the hands of the event being moved to Sydney. They're very fond of having it in Australia. I was in Perth in August this year when Dricus was too good for Israel Adesanya, and that venue was 15,000 at the RAC in Perth. So that's a similar format that they've been using. They want that controllable factor, and I think that it's until we have something like that in South Africa, it's going to be a long time before we see our very own champion fighting on South African, let alone African soil.
He won International Fighter of the Year at the recent MMA Awards. Just how different are these two fighters a year on from their very first meeting?
Dricus has really, he's evolved into this apex predator of the middleweight division. He's got a very awkward style, and everyone knows that he's got this awkward style, but he is so strong. He's so powerful. And, I think Israel Adesanya found out that Dricus really hits like a truck, and that if you get on the other end of that, you're in trouble. And we saw that in Perth. I think when it comes to Dricus and the hours that he's put in and the way that he's learnt with each fight, he's improved, he's going to be a handful for Sean Strickland. Strickland, though, would have taken a lot of lessons out of their fight. He knows what he's in store for, and I'm sure he'll come with a different game plan, because just to stand and utilize his jab as well as his striking is not going to be good enough against Dricus du Plessis, and he'll want to make a statement. How good he is, we know that Strickland is a former champion. He's an outstanding athlete, but does he have enough for Dricus du Plessis? I don't think so. I think Dricus has evolved into this incredible athlete with a champion mindset, surrounded himself with fantastic training partners. He's got a genius of a coach. So I don't see how Sean Strickland can stop Dricus du Plessis from holding on to that UFC middleweight belt.
There was some talk that it may actually be Chimaev, and you mentioned his defeat of Robert Whittaker, he broke his jaw. So would that naturally be, and I know that this is very far in advance, but if he does have to see past Sean Strickland in February, would that be the next natural opponent for him?
You would think so, and it would have to then be somewhere where Chimaev could actually fight. But at the same time, Dricus wants to fight the best. He's been fighting guys who were posters on his wall when he was growing up, like Whittaker, and dismantled Whittaker. I mean, Chimaev is a phenomenal athlete, and there was this meme doing the rounds on social media that Dricus had instructed people in the gym to grow their beards and to resemble Khamzat Chimaev. But, that was very short-lived. I think Chimaev is definitely on the radar for Dricus du Plessis. There's a lot of talk that he also might go up a weight division. He's a big middleweight. He walks around without cutting weight at about 100 kilograms. So, for him to go down to middleweight to 84 is always something that needs to be scientifically done, has to be measured. They've got that down to a fine art now. But when it comes to going up to light heavy and facing someone like an Alex Pereira, double weight division champion, that also appeals to Dricus. So I wouldn't be surprised if he moved up a weight division after taking on Strickland. But at the same time, Dricus has always said he wants to be the greatest middleweight of all time and one of the greatest UFC athletes ever. So we'll have to wait and see. If it is Chimaev, that will be a fantastic, fun fight to watch. Dricus will certainly be tested in the wrestling. But when it comes to going up to face someone like Pereira, wow, that's just absolutely fantastic. And if that does happen, we're in for a real treat.
Sias du Plessis, thank you very much. MMA, a commentator and a journalist chatting to us here on Newzroom Afrika. Once again, thanks so much for your thoughts.